The opinions on this program are those of the program host and guest and not necessarily those of WPSL. WPSL does not endorse products that may be mentioned. Any reproduction or retransmission of this broadcast is strictly prohibited without written consent of WPSL. Legal questions? Ask a lawyer. Give us a call at 340-1590, 340-1590 here at the studios of WPSL. And Ask a Lawyer with your host, attorney Stuart M. Address.
Good morning. This is Stuart Address for Ask a Lawyer, September 24th, 2021. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Does this apply to all of us or only some of us?
Only if you're vaccinated.
Only if you're vaccinated. Let's discuss it in the context of Florida's school mask policy, which we've talked about the last few weeks. And let's talk about it in the context of the new school quarantine policy, effective this past Wednesday. Greg is looking quizzical. I guess he'll get the info like everybody else. To me, this may indeed be perhaps my most important show, because it is literally a matter of life and death. Now, we have been talking, I was gone last week, but we've been talking about the school mass, and that we had a trial judge find that the governor's executive order was unconstitutional. And then the governor asked the appellate court, the First District Court of Appeal, for a stay to put that unconstitutional determination on hold while they litigated the entire case. Well, when we were last together on September 10th, the First District Court of Appeal actually entered an order, and it stayed the circuit court judge's ruling, which declared unconstitutional Governor DeSantis' executive order banning the mandating of masks by school districts. Now, 13 school districts had gone against the governor's order. However, the First District Court of Appeals stay meant that the school districts could not require masks unless they won their case after it was fully litigated. Now, that could be the end of the year, school year, that is. The first DCA decision stated, and I quote, "The adequate level of safety in schools and other public settings is a political question reserved entirely for the elected representatives who are publicly accountable," close quote. A political question? I thought it was a scientific question. I thought it was a constitutional question of whether the governor exceeded his authority under the powers given to him by the Constitution and the Parents' Bill of Rights. I guess I was naive. The First District Court of Appeal order continued. In finding irreparable harm, the trial court should not have substituted its own health policy preferences or risk assessments for those of the governor, end quote. Wait, again? I thought the trial court made its decision very clear. After evaluating the scientific evidence over 5 days and balancing the risks of harm in permitting a mask ban or allowing a mandate against masks. Maybe I didn't read the same decision of Judge Cooper as did the First District Court of Appeal, because the first DCA decree means the state can now go after schools financially if they decide to impose mask mandates. Yet several of the 13 have done just that. Now, I'll say this. I commend those school districts' bravery in standing up for what they believe during a worldwide pandemic. However, I struggle with the belief in those districts that while they will eventually be proven correct, my belief that we must live with the decisions of our courts, the rule of law. until a resolution on the merits, the first DCA stay means those who have decided to go maskless could risk infecting others if they were COVID-19 positive, but just asymptomatic. Now, DeSantis's response to the first DCA stay came in the form of 2 sentences on his Facebook page. Quote, "No surprise here. The first DCA has restored the right of parents to make the best decision for their children. I will continue to fight for parents' rights," end quote. Now, to me, the governor's position is arrogant and obnoxious.
And my question again is, where does home rule come in on this? The school district should have the right to do what they're going to do in their districts.
Home rule, the school district's having the right locally. I agree. I don't know. Apparently, to the first DC, it's a political question. Maybe that means the courts just don't want to get involved in it. I don't know. I will tell you that, you know, in DeSantis's response to me was not only arrogant and obnoxious, I think it could be fairly characterized as a schoolboy's gloating. I mean, really, those parents now who are against masks may impose their will over parents who seek to protect their kids by having them wear masks. So which one is more dangerous? Letting those who want to be maskless impose their will over the ones who want to wear masks, or making everybody wear masks where nobody, you know, or everybody has a lesser chance of becoming infected and dying? You know, with all the scientific evidence that wearing masks protects you and others from infection, and while Florida is still one of the few states leading the nation in continuing infection and death, the governor's position is to kill voters and those too young to vote. That's right. I'm calling the governor a murderer. I really believe that. The governor is killing people within this state. He's killing people who might even vote for him. How many celebrities and radio and TV personalities and politicians have come out against vaccines, against masks, and all of a sudden get COVID and die? It's not a far stretch to say that DeSantis is killing his own voters. And for those of you who disagree, go ahead. Call me. 340-1590. Blast me. This country and this state has simply gone crazy. To quote the title of a very old movie, it's a mad, mad, mad world. And I wonder for how long we'll have it, or for how long we'll have this democracy. Indeed, some news outlets have written that perhaps the first DCA's decision was not entirely unexpected. Now, I don't want to buy into this, but I didn't like it when Trump said it when he was president. And I thought that Chief Justice Roberts very clearly and correctly rebuked him that there are no Democratic judges and there are no Republican judges. There are judges. And I have always believed that. Yes, some judges are more conservative than others, and some are more liberal than others. But for the most part, I have always believed that. But what some of these news outlets have found is, and they're correct, that Governor DeSantis has appointed, I think it's 3 of the Florida Supreme Court justices since he took office in January of 2019. The 3 are those 3 that were approved by a very, very conservative Federalist Society. Moreover, the First District Court of Appeal, which granted the stay, sits in Tallahassee. They hear disputes involving state government. Republicans have controlled the governor's office for so long that not a single judge on the first DCA was appointed by a Democrat. So, to a layperson, the average person on the street, I can understand that one might think that this was just a political decision, not a political question, but a political decision. I really I struggle with that because I don't want to believe that. If I believe that, then why the heck am I litigating cases if the answer is predetermined? If that's the way it is, and maybe some of my clients have been right that they're not going to get a fair shot. I have not really bought into that, but wow, when you look at how the deck is stacked and you look at some of these surprising decisions, I'm sorry, some people might have a point. So now, what has the governor done in the face of that victory on the 10th? In the face of his gloating in his Facebook page? What's he done lately? Well, just this week, on sweet old Wednesday, he had a new Surgeon General that he appointed himself, Surgeon General for the state of Florida. And surprise, surprise, a new rule was issued that allows students directly exposed to COVID-19. I'm going to say that again. It allows students directly exposed to a COVID-19 positive person to keep on going to school so long as they're asymptomatic. Say what? Yes, Virginia, the Florida governor, aided by his handpicked new Surgeon General, will now allow parents whose children were directly exposed to someone with COVID-19 to go to school as long as they are asymptomatic. So it doesn't matter that someone who is asymptomatic may still be infected. It doesn't matter that if infected, they can infect other students, faculty, employees, parents, grandparents. It doesn't matter. The parents can send them to school because the parents have rights. The parents have rights to send their kids who were directly exposed to a COVID-19 person to school to perhaps infect my son and kill me. That's where the governor stands. So really what has happened is the governor's new rule makes schools the ultimate babysitter and childcare. That's what it's about. You know, DeSantis has talked so long about we're not closing Florida, we're reopening Florida. You know, we're getting kids to school. Parents need to go back to work. I don't really disagree with the concept. But when you're saying you're going to send your kids to school who have been exposed to somebody we all know has tested positive for COVID-19, you have turned the schools into childcare and babysitters. And you've exposed the rest of the population there to COVID-19, to an increased risk of infection, an increased risk of transmission to others. And you're doing that for parents' rights. What about my rights? Which is safer, masks or no masks going to school? Which is safer? Keeping kids exposed to COVID-19 in quarantine or sending them to school? Come on, this is not a political issue. There can't be a rational debate as to which one is right and which one is wrong. I mean, has the earth gone off its axis? Are we upside down? And I guess we have a caller, and either Pat has a question, or Pat agrees with me, or Pat's about to blast me. We'll find out.
Go ahead, Pat. You're on.
Hey there, Pat. You there, Pat?
Pat. Hello.
Earth calling Pat.
Pat's not there. Okay.
All right, well, maybe he'll call back. Maybe what I said made him apoplectic.
He may be calling on one of those Kmart cell phones.
Now, this rule that I got, first I got a call from the St. Lucie County School District on one of those, tree lines. And it told me to look out for an email. And then I looked into my email, and there it was, this new rule, and explained to me what it meant. And the way it was written, I really think that whoever wrote it at the school board was trying to say this is stupid, but this is the rule. I'll tell you what I did. I've never done this before. I'll tell you what I did with that email. I sent it to CNN and MSNBC. And I'm not saying they've reported on it because of me, but they have reported on this new DeSantis rule about sending exposed kids to school. Now, this rule, this parents' rights rule, is at odds with guidelines set by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The CDC in August stated that the only time asymptomatic individuals exposed to COVID-19 do not need to quarantine is if they're fully vaccinated. I dare say that parents who are sending their kids to school without masks are not vaccinated. The CDC said in August that those not fully vaccinated are supposed to quarantine for 14 days after exposure, regardless of the result of their own COVID test. Or they can go under a 7 to 10 day quarantine with a negative test result, depending upon their local health department's recommendations. But no, the CDC, long the bastion of respect in the entire world, isn't good enough for our Republican governor. And make no mistake, the fact that he is Republican is fundamental to his decision. Why? Because these things are only being done by Republican governors, not Democrats. Why does that matter? Because it means that these positions and the actions taken are political, not public health based. Why does that matter? Because these decisions are unquestionably, undeniably killing people. Literally. Not figuratively, literally. Florida has one of the highest ongoing death rates per week of any state in this country. One of the highest exposure rates of any state in the country. You can't tell me that at least some of the deaths are not a result of policies like these. So I guess it is apolitical, non-political. As long as the policy kills voters and others indiscriminately, whether they're Democratic, Republican, Independent, or Martian. All right, we got Pat back. So let's go to Pat.
Yeah, hopefully we can hear him this time. Pat, you're on.
Hey, Pat.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I can hear you a bit.
You're very low. Speak up to the phone. And turn your radio off. Pat?
Okay. I just want to know what the lawyer thinks of the order
Pat, we cannot.
all over the country.
Pat, hey, Pat, we can't hear you. Speak up. Okay. Get a new phone, please.
All right, all I know is he wants to know what I thought about something all over the country. I got nothing else out of that.
No, I couldn't hear him at all.
All right, well, a stupider policy of any politician I could have never imagined. Kill your voters and their kids. Whoever would have thought in my lifetime that any politician would intentionally craft a policy that would kill his or her voters. I'm sorry. Maybe people will call me, some old geezer or something. I'm only 61, but I couldn't. What can I say? I mean, I have a political science degree. I don't understand this. How can you intentionally have a policy that increases the prospect that your voter will be killed, will die? If any of you can explain that to me, call me. Call me. Call me at 340-1590. Explain it to me. I don't understand it. I'm not joking. I'm not being facetious. I'm not being one of those radio shock jocks. If you've listened to this show, you know I have strong opinions, but I don't understand this. How can anybody keep coming up with policies that are going to kill people? Well, I think I have an answer. Either it is because he's running for governor next November and he wants that Republican base and he has to show how conservative he is. Or it's because he wants to run for president in 2024 if Papa Trump doesn't run. Or if Papa Trump runs, he wants a nice cushy job in the cabinet. Who knows? Maybe as Secretary of Education. I'm sorry, that's the only way I can come up with the answer. And, I am not just being a Democrat. I am not just being liberal. It's radio, so I'll be careful, but dang it. I have a Juris Doctor degree. I went to 4 years of college and 3 years of law school. I think of worst possible outcomes to advise my clients in the best possible manner to protect them. I cannot understand a policy that scientifically is crafted to increase the risk of serious illness or death to your own voters. It's not just me who has that opinion. I mean, come on, the CDC. I mean, maybe I know a lot of you don't like the CDC anymore. I never heard of anybody previously complain about the CDC until COVID. If the CDC spoke about, I don't know, swine flu or bird flu or turtle flu, everybody wants to know what the CDC said. God forbid they got this thing, whatever it was. Now, here comes along COVID, and we have a president who is anti-mask, and even though he got a vaccine, anti-vax, anti-admitting he had a vaccine. I don't know. Somebody made this political, and I know who it was. Okay, let's be blunt here. Trump turned a pandemic, a virus, into a political football.
Well, I think the other problem with the CDC is that their messaging has been screwed up from the very beginning.
Well, that is true. The CDC has had messaging issues. And I think the CDC was overwhelmed with this event as well. The CDC can only do so much as they're budgeted to do. And who crafts the budget? The president and Congress. And if the CDC, they don't think needs an extra $500 million, it doesn't get an extra $500 million. If NASA doesn't need it, it doesn't get it. If defense needs it, defense gets it, no matter how it's spent. But, the CDC has had an impeccable reputation. The fact that they've had issues with messaging, I'm sorry, I ascribe to, staff and budgeting and overwhelming exhaustion. Nobody's calling to tell me why I'm wrong. Nobody's calling to explain the policy to me. Nobody's calling to tell me that this policy really does make sense. Is there anybody to defend it?
I think the other thing that's totally confusing is what's going on at the border and all these people coming in that may have a disease.
You want me to talk about immigration now?
No, but that's the other part of this thing that, has got everybody up in the air.
Well, everybody's up in the air about immigration too right now, and for good reason. And I'm not saying I completely agree or I agree with the current administration's method of handling things. But when it comes to COVID, I know I'm not going to change minds. And I know there's at least 30% of the minds I'll never change, nor will anybody. But why are we treating this politically? Really? You think the virus gives a dang whether you're Democrat or Republican? You think the virus knows? Or is this a conspiracy designed to infect Republicans? Come on. Come on. The only way I think this is going to be corrected is this November at the ballot box when we vote for governor. This November when we vote for Congress and Senate. And in 2024 when we vote for president. And I'll say something else, and I'm not going to have a discussion about it, but those progressives and moderates in Congress had better figure out a way to get on the same page and to learn to compromise. Because if they can't compromise, how can they expect the Republicans to compromise? If they can't compromise and they shoot this thing down and the Biden plan and his administration is sunk a year into office, less than, who do you think is going to win Congress in November? Who do you think will be elected president in 2024? It won't be a Democrat, I promise you that.
Biden's getting as much pushback from the liberal wing of his party and maybe even more than the Republicans.
Yes, he is getting more pushback from the progressive wing of the Democrats than from the Republicans, because the Republicans can afford to just sit there and not say anything, or for philosophical reasons, truly disagree with them. The progressives and the moderates want the same thing. They want legislation that they believe will do what Biden has said he wants to do. They just disagree on the size, and they disagree on the order in which we're gonna vote. Now, I realize that the progressives have a lot of reasons to doubt what the rest of the Democratic Party might do with all the promises that have been made to progressives over the years. But let me say this. Progressives did not think that President Biden would govern progressively. He has been one of the most progressive presidents so far. If you all sink him, it's your fault. I guarantee there'll be no progressive wing of the party because you'll all be voted out. Democrats cannot sink this right now. Democrats have an opportunity to redo the roads, the highways, the bridges, the tunnels, create a new infrastructure for the 21st century. This comes around once in a lifetime. If the Democrats are the ones that kill it, man, will I be angry. I'll tell you. But getting back to the maskless policy of our governor and the no quarantine of kids exposed to COVID-19 policy of our governor effective this past Wednesday. You know, I'm 61. I hope to be around for a while. But, you know, comparatively at least, my time on earth is waning. I still, though, want this world and this democracy to be here stronger than ever for my son and his kids and for generations to come. I still care very much, as I think you all can hear, even if you disagree with me. But I must admit, I grow wearier and wearier, and soon I just might not be able to take it anymore. When that occurs, I will retire. And one more, Don Quixote will retreat into his madness. I have fought a good fight. I have represented underdogs. I have represented the small against the big. And I've enjoyed it. And I know I've helped a lot of people. But I got to tell you, even though I want you who may be listening as clients, I've got to tell you, I grow weary. Our legal system, if I can't count on judges to truly be independent, I don't know how long I could be a lawyer. Our political system, is democracy really in question? If that's the case, I don't know, maybe I should go to some corner where nobody can find me, build a bomb shelter, you know, to live out my days and learn how to fire a gun. I don't know, maybe. Or maybe I should find one of the other wonderful countries in this world, beautiful countries, not just the US, and go live a more quiet life. I still have some fight in me, but I don't know how to take idiots who want to kill their own voters. I don't understand. The thing has gotten me so, I mean, I've talked about masks over show after show after show, last year, this year, but I've never got as nutso as I have with this new rule about sending kids exposed to people testing positive for COVID-19 and saying, kids, if you don't have symptoms yet, go to school. You may be a carrier, you may be infected, but go to school. And you don't even have to wear a mask. And how many now might that infect? How many might that hospitalize? How many could that even kill? I'm not talking in hyperbole. I mean it. This is a killer rule. And I don't understand it. And I don't understand anybody who would put it into effect. I don't understand a Surgeon General who would want to be Surgeon General so bad that he'd say, oh yeah, I'll do this. Where is our General Milley? Where is the person in Florida willing to stand up to the governor and say the emperor has no clothes? If somebody had done that early enough with Trump, we wouldn't have had the mess. If the Republicans had convicted him the second time and determined that he could not run for office again, we wouldn't have this problem. You know, my kid only has about 20 days of school left, actual school days, because he's graduating in December, and because given that he's dual enrolled at IRSC, he either goes to school at LPA 2 days a week or in alternate weeks 3 days a week. So when you count 5 days out of every 2 weeks, he goes to LPA. He's computed it, not me. He only has about 20 school days left. Thank you, thank you. Not only don't I have to wake up at 5 in the morning to get him to the bus, but more importantly, I can reduce the risk of him being exposed to COVID-19. And, you know, we're all vaccinated here, of course, but I could risk the fact that maybe I get a breakthrough infection. Terrifies me. I can get him out of the school system. I'm happy. But what about all the others? You know, I'm a member of the LPA School Advisory Committee. We had our first meeting of the year yesterday by Zoom. I've been on that committee, I think now for 3 years, because I think LPA is a wonderful school. This is a good school district. Long past when Aaron leaves LPA, LPA will be a part of our lives, a part of his life. I want it to prosper. I don't want all its kids to be killed off. Do you know, I learned something yesterday at what they call the SAC meeting, the School Advisory Committee. I learned that, you know, somebody gets a fever now, that's a big deal. Parents get called, they have to immediately get down there. So a kid got a fever. Parents were called. Parents came in the front door. They were ushered out the back door. Why? Because at LPA, they have an on-site COVID testing center. And they were able to immediately administer a test so that they get a result back as soon as possible and get that kid back into school if he's negative. That's the way you handle it. That's policy. I learned that there are 4 of those sites in the St. Lucie County School District. 1 north, 1 south Fort Pierce, 1 central, 1 further over in Southport, St. Lucie. I believe, if I recall correctly, it's LPA, it's Fort Pierce Central, it's the local middle school over here. Oh gosh, I forget the name right now. And it's Fort St. Lucie High School. So the 4 different geographical areas, so that if you're at a different school and, you know, kid gets a fever, before you even take him home, you could drive him over to one of these sites and get administered, you know, a test. And that way, if he's negative or she's negative, get him back to school. That's policy. But saying, well, gee, Sally's been exposed to grandma who has COVID-19 and is in the hospital, but she doesn't even have a sniffle or a cough. So let's send her to school. And by the way, let's send her to school without a mask. Come on, that's not policy. How could the First District Court of Appeal criticize the Leon County trial judge for substituting his views for parents' rights and saying this is a political question? This was a question of constitutional law. This was a question of, did the governor's order exceed his constitutional power? That is precisely what our courts are for. That is what the judicial branch of our government is intended for. I don't understand it. And I don't understand the policy. I don't understand why anybody would come up with a policy. And I don't know why somebody would stand up and constantly have press conferences or events and brag about it. I have to wonder if we were able to get inside DeSantis's head, or any of these people, how many of them truly believe what they're spouting, and how many of them are just spouting it for political gain? Because I'll tell you, if you believe it, then I can disagree with you, but at least you believe it. If you don't believe it and you're creating these policies, you are the worst, lowest form of traitor. You are such a cancer to this democracy. I never, ever, 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 ever thought that this democracy would be at risk. I never even thought about it. Yet I'm now living in a reality that I don't know, the government could be overthrown. They tried. If Trump is elected in 2024, you think he will not have learned from his mistakes? You think he'll give up power in 2028? If you do, I got a bridge in Manhattan to sell you. Bring your beads. Come on. If Trump is ever allowed into office again as president, maybe as dog catcher, but as president, then it could be in my lifetime, but democracy will end and despotism will begin. And that great American experiment that was discussed in the late 1700s will come to a close. You know, there's this wonderful story about, I forget which founding father was asked, what form of government did you create? No, democracy, if you can keep it. It's hard work. It's worthwhile, but it's hard work. We've kept it 250 years, essentially. You're going to get it up now? For somebody, oh gosh, man, I tell you, I must be old. I don't understand any of this. Alexis de Tocqueville, a great French philosopher, wrote a seminal political science treatise, Democracy in America, from the viewpoint of a foreigner, looking at what we had crafted, what we had created, admiring it. And I had the privilege to teach a section when I was at Rutgers, a section of Political Science 101, which is one of these giant lecture classes where the professor has teaching assistants that teach a section, you know, once a week. I taught a section from Alexis de Tocqueville's Democracy in America And I never, ever imagined that this democracy could be at risk. I mean, come on, war? Sure. I guess if the Germans had won, this would be pretty different right now. They have lots of movies and TV shows about that. If China were to start a war, or we were to start a war with China, if we were to lose, I guess things might look different. Russia? Okay, I understand. If there's a war and you lose, life changes as you know it. But from within, not even the worst presidents in our history have put the democracy at risk. And now, even though Trump is out of office, we have a few Republican, really, really conservative, apparently a Republican governors, including our own, that are creating these policies that kill people. And I wish somebody would call and discuss this with me. I feel like I've been sermonizing, and I really haven't meant to. Honestly, I just when I heard this policy on Wednesday, I guess I went apoplectic. I did the only thing I could think of doing, which was send it to CNN and MSNBC. I didn't know what else to do. What was I gonna stand and picket on Port St. Lucie Boulevard and I don't know, Veterans Memorial Parkway? It wasn't going to make it do any good to go yelling at the St. Lucie County School Board. I don't have any connections up in Tallahassee where maybe I could have got in to see somebody important, argue my position, try to be logical, try to be persuasive, something people hire me for. I didn't know what to do. And I'll be honest with you, it's not often I truly don't know what to do. That I really feel powerless. And this is one of those times. And this show today is in part my venting, my way of doing something, speaking my mind at least, hoping somebody hears it. Somebody maybe with influence that can do something or start a movement. Because I don't know what else to do. I personally will be absolved from this issue soon because of my kid graduating a semester early. I never would have imagined that when he started 6th grade at LPA. I'll tell you. I certainly, he argued with me. He wanted to get an associate's degree by the time he graduated. And I laughed at him and I laughed at him. I laughed at him like my father laughed at me when I told him I wanted to be a lawyer. That's impossible. You? Nobody in our family's ever even gone to college. Ha ha. Well, my dad was very proud when I became a lawyer. I remember graduation day, him going into one of the lecture classrooms, those big classrooms, and going up behind the lectern and raising his arm as if he was, you know, giving a speech. I probably have a picture of that somewhere. I'm very proud of my son, graduating a semester early and with an associate's degree. I'll tell you this, and I think this applies to everything, everywhere, especially with kids. We can lecture and lecture and lecture. We can punish. We can do all sorts of things. We have limited success until their own light bulb goes off. And I told him, when he wasn't turning in assignments that he had actually done, I told him one day, your light bulb is going to go off. And you're going to realize this is important to you. And I will never have to ask you about homework again. And it happened. His light bulb went off in 10th grade after he had had a horrible 9th grade, which will impact the colleges he can get into. But his light bulb went off, and that kid, wow. So I certainly don't want anybody going to school that's been exposed to somebody positive and infecting him and potentially harming him. And I wouldn't want that for any of your kids or your grandkids or any of your friends' kids or any kid who gets sick. This has been an insidious almost 2 years. Why are we all still fighting with each other? On this issue, we can't just decide. There's no Democratic policy, there's no Republican policy. The policy is to kill the virus, to protect ourselves. I hear that music starting, and I guess I can stop now. And I hope those of you who have heard me, I hope you enjoyed it or found it educational or something, or hated it. Hope maybe you have some emotional reaction. I will be back next Friday. Hopefully we can talk about some legal stuff. Have a good weekend, have a good week. And I'll say, be safe for you and for everybody else. Thank you. Stuart Address for Ask a Lawyer.
You've been listening to Ask a Lawyer right here on WPSL, Port St. Lucie, Talk of the Treasure Coast, webcaster to the world, and WSTU Stuart, Martin County's Heritage Station.